So what I'm doing here, usually we kind of have speed models that indicate the volume of your final cloth. But in this case, we're going to recreate some of Aloy's pans, which were pretty tight. So I'm just going to draw directly on the base body in this case. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to draw on with a black brush the seam lines. And the reason we do this is because all the patterns in the world of Horizon are pretty unique. They're quite unconventional. So you can't just go online and just find some pants patterns and expect it to work. So the easiest way is to kind of reconstruct them the other way, where you just draw them directly on the in 3D, and then use UVs to kind of reconstruct it. So you can kind of see me painting here. And one thing I also wanted to mention is, why are we using Marvelous Designer instead of just sculpting things directly in ZBrush? It's true, you can sculpt like really amazing cloth in ZBrush, but it's very time intensive, and we're having a huge cast of characters, and the key is to keep it consistent, and that's why what Marvelous comes in.
And we couldn't do just one set of pants and use it for many characters. Every character was so unique that we had to redo everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And Marvelous Designer helped us a bit at that.
So at this point, I'm going to just switch over to ZBrush and finish this off. So this is the final model. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert our poly paint to a mask. Mask by color, intensity. Okay, and then we're just going to split the mask points. And that will leave you with a garment like this. And then you're just going to go to Z plugins, and then UV Master, and you're just going to unwrap this. I kind of prepped this already.
So this has UVs?
This has UVs, and you notice also I kind of sliced off one side because it's a symmetrical pattern. Oh. So
there we go.
Then we just kind of go to UV map, morph UVs. And what you do at this point is you export this and take it into Marvelous Designer. And that would look something like this. And what I'm going to do here is just quickly trace this as a pattern. And the trick is here is to use the minimal amount of points to just keep it easy for yourself, and then use the curve line tool to actually capture all the specific shapes. And this will fit perfectly in the end once you actually
stitch it together,
which is super nice. So yeah, this is very simple, just matching all the shapes. I'll just skip forward a bit.
This is what it looks.
So this is what it looks like once you're done, and you kind of symmetrize the pattern, kind of laid out everything a bit more neatly. And I just also imported like a low-res version of the base body and kind of draped everything around it roughly. And then I'll just show you how our final Marvelous Designer pattern looks like. So at this point, I come in and I made sure all the seam lengths are the same in between all these patterns, because you don't want to get unwanted tension. And this is kind of how far we take things in Marvelous Designer. And at this point, you would export it back into ZBrush and add all this material definition we've been talking about. So I actually got that preloaded. So these are the specific pants in ZBrush. And as you can see here, again, all these memory wrinkles I was talking about before are present, especially in areas of lots of deformation. And then this kind of leads into the next subject. You can also notice all these seams. They have like these nice contact wrinkles where it's kind of suggesting that there's stitching going on. So I'm just going to show you how we made a brush like this. So,
brush making tutorial.
Yeah. I've made this in Marvelous Designer. It's super simple. You just put a piece of fabric on the ground plane, and you put a little elastic band here on the side, and you just give it like 98% elasticity or something, and you'll get like some nice wrinkles. So then we're going to go into MRGZB grabber and make an alpha out of it. And there we go.
Do you have to switch edit mode?
No, I got it. There we go. And then we go back here. I'll make a layer. And then we're just going to apply that alpha to the brush, and you want to make sure you're going to make it into a roll brush. So that's modifiers roll. And because this is like a non-square alpha, you want to set the roll distance to 2. That works really well for this particular alpha. There we go. Slightly smaller brush size. It's a bit too big. So then you can kind of go in and add seam lines. You can also just invert it. Yeah, it's usually better just one side. And then you usually play with the layer opacity to kind of tone that down. And we got like a whole series of these for linens, for hides, you know. And the key is here to keep the consistency, because all the big wrinkles are Marvelous Designer. It's nice if all these small contact wrinkles also have the same Marvelous Designer look to it.
So basically for every type of fabric, we made an extra set of brushes that kind of reflect the material response. So for these wrinkles and the pull and the stretch, so it's like an entire library of this stuff. So that sped up the workflow a little bit.
Yeah, it's really handy.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go into the main chunk of the hide live demo, where we're just going to convert this into, this is like a OBJ out of Marvelous Designer.
All triangles.
I'll show the, yeah, you see, like this is not really workable. So I'm just going to quickly turn this into a workable topology and turn it into hide afterwards. So the first thing you want to do is make a duplicate out of it. Then we're going to go Z-remesh this real quick. Default options are fine.
That's the cool thing, it's just one click and you got workable geo.
Yeah, exactly. It's really great.
So cool.
And then I want to capture all the detail from the original one, so I'm just going to give this 4 subdivision levels and then do a quick reproject. I always put my blur to 0. I'd rather have the faceting and have the control over, you know, to kind of smooth it out myself. So that's cool, that captured all the details. So now we're going to switch to my favorite brush in ZBrush, Smooth Directional. It's super useful for wrinkles, to clean up any type of cloth, because you got like control over your direction. You can go in against it and really smooth it out, or you can go with the wrinkles, which is like the main way of using it, and you actually keep all that definition. And then if you get some artifacts like this, you just release shift at the end real quick to kind of get like a clean smooth at the end. So this just will take a second to kind of clean all this up. And after that, we're going to go into adding thickness.
Faster.
Yeah. So we're going to use panel loops for that. And it's really cool if you set your edges correctly on panel loops, the amount of edges, you can just do a reconstruct subdiv on it afterwards. Yep. So you can get all your subdivision levels back. So this one has 4 subdivision levels, so in this case I'm going to use 8 edge loops. So I just deleted my subdivs so I can make edge loops out of it. So polish 0, no bevel, elevation minus 100, and then loops.
So it goes inside?
Yeah, elevation. You always want to go inside. You know, you don't want to change the actual surface. You just want to go give it some thickness. So then that's actually perfect thickness.
Show the polys.
And then I actually want to show off like this all is nicely polygrouped. Even the edges have separate polygroups. You know, sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't, but it's easier to fix it than to have to recreate it. So this is a great starting point. So then I'm going to just switch over to the correct subtool, where I've already placed this just using Move brush and a standard brush on the child Aloy character.
Bit of tweaking.
Yeah, and now we're going to actually start modeling this up to look like hide. So this workflow is based heavily on layers, like all the effects are on layers, and for time reasons, I'm just going to do a little section of it and then delete my results and just turn on a layer where this effect has been applied to the whole character. So first up are memory folds. So I got my brushes here, memory fold ladder. So this is actually one of the default alphas, 58, just with a harder radial fade on it.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's really good.
So cool for wrinkle stuff.
Yeah.
Creature skin.
So what I'm doing here is I'm going in the areas that I would expect to have like these deep memory wrinkles and kind of start applying that. And then one thing, practical thing, you don't want to draw straight. You kind of just want to wiggle your stroke while you're doing this to kind of get a lively effect. And again, we're always trying to think about how this works. You don't just want to apply this globally. So if this is the waist, the twisting would mainly happen in this area. So that's where I'm going to apply like the bulk of my memory wrinkles.
Reference on the second screen.
Yeah. This screen is always filled with reference. There you go.
We even bought some actual leather stuff
in
the office and fur and things.
That's really cool.
And then
it's
bend
super
it
useful.
and see what happens. So it's always great to see that in real and how it behaves and stress it.
And the key is also, if you use a light pressure, you can kind of add some general kind of wrinkles and use smooth directional to kind of blend them out, but just kind of don't have the transitions being super hard between memory folds and nothing. So just kill that and turn on the layer so you can kind of see the global result.
I think you need to zoom in to see that better.
So I'm going to switch to like a more pleasant material. There you go.
You can see that already, the details.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay. So next up, we're going to add some drag rags. To just the point here is we're going to add some happy accidents to it, which is really nice. Like people who ever suffer from like blank canvas syndrome, where you just like, you don't know what to do if you're looking at like a blob of geo. It's really nice to just add a bunch of alphas on there and kind of pick out the happy accidents, especially for things like cloth sculpting. It's amazing. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting drag on it, and you do want to align it. These alphas have a direction, so you're putting them down with purpose.
And still with the logic, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, because this is leather, this is a super good one for linen actually, but I like to have it even a bit on hide. And then we're going to go in with our leather drag. And again, very directional. You want to kind of layer this. And you can already start seeing some happy accidents forming. And of course, this looks way ugly right now because it's like super intense. But you just want to tone this down a lot so you can get like hints of this that you can use later to kind of, sculpt up something nice.
The layer intensity.
Yeah, that's the key.
Have more control. The end.
So this would be like something like 0.1. I'll put it to 0.2 just for the audience sake, but like 0.1 is would be enough already when you're doing this for real. So I'll just kill this and put on the actual layer. So you can see it's very subtle, but there's something there you can use. Next up, like hide has this grain, and it really kind of informs a lot of the wrinkles. So we want to just cover, let's see if I got the correct brush. Yeah, the entire surface in this. And the key is to not have the grain of the texture, but it's to kind of have the wrinkle direction in here. So this is, again, just the standard Alpha 58 on a spray brush. And you just cover the entire surface like this. And again, the layer intensity is going to be toned way, way down. But this is just, setting us up for all these happy accidents when we're actually going in and doing all the deliberate sculpting.
It's also good for art direction, right? If the art director wants some layers a bit more intense, a bit less intense, it's way less destructive, so we can just go back and increase the intensity a bit. And
it kind of gives you big ZBrush files, but I never nuke my layers until once the thing is approved.
Keep the layers.
Yeah. And try to name your layers as well. I'm a bit messy myself, but then in the end you just use the morph target, to just like morph your visible thing and collapse it to a single layer. So in the meanwhile, while I was talking, I switched this on. Again, super, super subtle, but especially in these areas, it will help you out later a lot.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then we're going to start going in and being a bit more deliberate about our memory folds this time. So yeah, you can see it's quite a lot of building up a surface. So you can see here, this is going to be a kind of continuous theme where I'm using the same brush as before, but I'm going in with a very small brush size, and I'm kind of starting to work from big to small, kind of defining, the wrinkles I like, kind of exploiting all those happy accidents. So you just kind of go in and do a whole treatment on the entire surface like this. There you go. And then next thing, we want to use one of those roll brushes. We're going to know all these different panels are going to be stitched together in the final model. We kind of know that from the concept art that was given to us. So you kind of want to show that, give an indication that there's tension. So this is another roll brush. For this, it's nice if you isolate the individual panels. So you kind of just go in, can be quite aggressive, and it's nice to go in and out on this as well, because otherwise all your wrinkles will just go out and like the global shading will kind of reveal the trick. So on this one as well, it's very nice to work in and out. And then again, you just lower the intensity to something that's actually appropriate.
There you go.
That's actually pretty good. And then we'll just turn it on all the edges. You can see on the original one, I actually did it slightly bigger. So it's starting to look pretty cool. And now that all these kind of dragged and all these kind of alpha tricks have been applied, you go in and do the actual sculpting work. So first up, what I'm going to do is take a Damien standard and really aggressively kind of block in all my main folds. And the trick for this is, you can guess by this point already, I'm going to lower the intensity down a lot, but you want to break up some of this marvelous feel. And this is a really controlled way to kind of emphasize the folds you want and also, kind of make them unique. And because it's height as well, you definitely want to put in those ones that go in deep.
Characteristics.
So, yeah. Something like that. Then we'll go in with the standard brush. At this point, I'm actually going to start exploiting all those happy accidents I was talking about before. I just mentioned it, didn't really do anything with it. So I'm seeing in these alphas all kind of things that are lining up. Also, like for example, here, you kind of want to line up those roll brush wrinkles with the actual Marvelous Designer sim. Also, when you're building up mass like this, it's good to build up the mass on the underside of the wrinkles, because like gravity always pulls everything down. So you want to keep that in mind when you're building this up. And again, just go in heavy-handed, and you'll tone down the layers in the end.
It's more like giving it the characteristic feel of the target material.
Mm-hmm.
But now then,
that's a bit too much. So at this point, I'll also start actually playing around with the light, which has a huge impact on how you kind of perceive your wrinkles. So again, before we continue, we're just going to put this down. And now we're going to go in, just repeat the same process, but with a lot smaller brushes. We're going to go in Damien Standard and actually make these memory wrinkles not just superficial details, but actually start etching the successful ones in. Kind of just ignore the ones you don't feel are adding that much to the look, and you're actually emphasizing the ones that you feel have potential. So I'm for this live demo, for time's sake, I just switched from the big size brushes immediately to kind of small brushes, but when I'm just doing production work, I would usually do this in like a three-step process, where I just go in with very big brushes, then I'll go in with like medium-sized brushes, and in the end I'll just finish it off with very tiny brushes. And that's kind of a good general artistic thing to do, is always work from the very big shapes to the small shapes. So I'll just put that down, and we're starting to get something. And then we're going to go in with a small standard brush. And now you can actually start to sell the really successful ones. That's not so nice. And again, I'll switch the actual layer on where the whole garment actually got this treatment, and then you'll see the big impact this kind of pass makes. But when I'm actually doing this, I'm very careful about like my light placement, and also I'm basically switching between basic material and basic material 2 to kind of assess the highlight and still kind of tweak my layers at this point and add or subtract some of the look. A good global trick I can show you is also you go down on subdivision levels and then you got smooth directional again, and you can kind of really nuke folds, or you can kind of still kind of have them, but this is really good on a layer to have as well. If you kind of, you just work on a very matte material in a lighting situation that's pretty forward like this, you have a tendency to kind of over exaggerate it, and then once you actually put the light to a bit more true position, which would be more of a sunlight position, then you see like, oh, I really overdid it. And then like a layer at the bottom with some smooth directional can really easily fix a lot of your problems. Yeah. So I'm just gonna delete all of that and turn on how this actually turned out. There you go. So you can see a lot of the big moves I did were very subtle, and the smaller moves are more, emphasized, really kind of controlling it. So next up, I'm actually gonna unisolate this and show up my stitches. So we got an insert mesh brush for this to quickly place them, but for time's sake, I just show the subtool, because the focus is here to just show the actual, making it look like hide. So we're gonna come in, and we're just gonna punch some holes. It's very standard. Damien standard to the rescue. I've got questions before why you don't just have like a separate drag rack for this, but it's so easy. Yep. So why should you? So you just point some holes, and then super simple. Just kind of, there we go. So it's like all the holes punched in. Then we're going to go to the edge delamination trick I mentioned during the presentation. So I got /2. This is actually just a normal ZBrush. It's just hidden.
So powerful.
Yeah, it's just hidden in the light box. So for this, you want to set the settings correct. You got to have backface masking on, otherwise you'll completely destroy the back surface. And then again, the trick is not to just make a simple stroke like that, but to kind of wiggle your stroke to give it a lot of characteristic. So you kind of need to align your canvas when you're doing it like that, and then, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. You just kind of wiggle it along the edge. And again, I'm just working at this, I'm not even touching the intensity. I know I got this on a layer, so I'll just adjust, the layer intensity after the fact. And especially if you're doing this, you got a lot of ground to cover, so you just want to have a clear indication of where you've been already. Oh, yeah, you got to make sure you're going the right direction. If you go the wrong direction, you're going to get one the opposite side, obviously. So I think that will get to the point. Yeah. And that's just, there you go. Usually 0.2 or 0.1 does the trick for this. Yeah. So you can kind of see. Especially cool. from a medium distance, you always got your final your final pixel density for your textures in mind. So from a medium distance, this is going to read very good. So just switch that on the entire thing, and then the last thing we want to do is we just added these holes and all this edge delamination, and you want to do one final pass of adding all this in manually. So we're just going to go in, standard brush, and kind of start thinking about it. Like these things would probably tear out and kind of line up with some of those alphas we got before. And for example, also here, these kind of stitches, they would kind of tear out the surface a bit. So you want to add, really think about it, so you don't just put in a lazy alpha. You always want to come in at one point and actually start manually working it in to make it like an artistic whole, Also with standard, really good to actually add some weight behind your lines. Again, don't be afraid to overwork it and then just, reduce the layer intensity. That's kind of the way to go. And also just kind of keep changing to like bigger size. Change your light materials around to kind of assess it in different situations. So like it's a bit intense here, so you want to kind of continue it.
Oh, there's a certain pull to it, right? To
Yeah,
these,
you want to pull it.
Clips.
Yeah, you want to make it feel like it's either going underneath, or you want to make it feel like there's an actual strong pull to it, and that's usually by going the other way and kind of making it feel like this, so it's actually pulling the fabric. This is also a very good shape for it. And then just kind of turn on the actual production thing we did here. So it's a bit more subtle because the layer intensity got reduced, and I used the morph trick to actually just blend this into a named layer. Cool. So I'm just going to zoom out now and add the subtool for the rest of the garment. I just want to bring to your attention that this is the actual ZTL we used at the production, and like all the normal maps for the final game mesh were baked from this particular model. So I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint now. And then like this is actually how that character ended up in the game. And just wanted to point out again to you, like all this height, like these sub-height sections with like really thick hide and buckskin, this really shows up in the final result. It's not just like it's a lighter color. You actually can kind of feel all this wobbling I was talking about, and you can feel how this is stiffer than before. So that's really the key of all this. Before I'm going to hand it over to Ben, who's going to talk about hard surface stuff, I'm just going to like kind of boil it down into my 3 takeaways.